Great stuff. Well, welcome everyone. I'll add anyone else that comes in along the way. We're really lucky tonight to have a guest speaker who not only has played the highest level of the game, but is now also coaching at the very highest level in the game as well. So, Martin, thanks ever so much for coming and speak to our group tonight. We really appreciate it, and we know that you're a busy man, and you're in Seattle in a minute. Is that correct?
Yes, we have a game tomorrow versus Seattle Sounders, and we flew yesterday 6 hours from Miami, so a big game for us.
All right, buddy. Well, good luck with that, first and foremost. I think to start with, if that's okay, Pat, would you mind going into a little bit of just a brief kind of summary of your career, how it started and playing career, and then we'll kind of move on to the coaching side, if that's okay.
Yeah, not a problem. So I came through the Stoke City FC Academy. I was with them from the age of 9 and went all the way through to the first team. So again, similar to some of the boys there, I went through an academy system. I was very lucky that we had the academy at Stoke City and had some excellent coaches. From Stoke City to Scunthorpe, I went to Scunthorpe for a year, which is excellent for my progression as a player, because I went from having been at a big club at Stoke City, the academy, all the nice things, to a lower level club in Scunthorpe for a year in the Championship. And then from Scunthorpe, I went to Burnley, where I spent the next 6 years at a very good, hard-working football club at Burnley, and we had some good success there and some good times. From Burnley, I went to Huddersfield Town for 2 years. And that was very indifferent for me as a player because I didn't play that much. From there, I went to Orlando City in the MLS, tried something new. I played there for a short time, had lots of injuries, and then really came into the latter stage of my career where I played for the Tampa Bay Rowdies in America. And when I returned home, kind of played in the lower leagues just to continue my career. But yeah, that's the summary of my clubs. And for someone like me, very honoured to have had such a long career. But I'm sure you're the same, Laurie. When you look back, I wish I could have played for a lot longer.
Oh, absolutely, buddy. But I mean, listen, I know I said brief summary, but I think you definitely, I obviously looked up to you. You undersold somewhat there. How many goals did you get, Pater, in your career?
I believe it's around the 90 mark, and that's a bit of a guesstimate. Again, I was to give me again to go through a summary of. I was a very hard-working centre forward. I never pretended to be a great footballer, but I certainly was a hard worker. I ran, and as a small centre forward, I saw my opportunities to score goals through movement and hard work and persistency. I played as the number 9. I played as a 7 and 11, and I had to learn to play the 7-11 because of my height and because of the physicality of the Championship and some moments the Premier League. So I preferred to play 9, but I adapted and played 7-11 as well. So I do believe I could have scored more goals if I'd have stayed as a 9, but I had to learn to play the 7-11 position, and in a way that really helped me learn the game a little bit more, which actually helped my coaching in the long run.
Well, and that's interesting. I think a lot of players have come with you with some questions about that afterwards. So you obviously allude to that, but you scoring 90, plus goals. How many games did you play in your career, Martin?
I believe it was around the 350 mark. I should really know this, guys. I'm sorry, but I think I played 350. And then I forgot to mention that I was very lucky to play for Northern Ireland. All my family are Irish, and I think I played around the 25 times for my country. I think I scored 3 goals for them, which is not a great return, if I'm honest, guys. But international football is really, really tough, and we were a team that played from the mid block a lot and defended a hell of a lot. So I was very lucky to play international football, and again on the coaching side, tactically one of the most elite levels of football that I believe you'll ever see.
Well, I mean, that's fantastic. Like you say, the guys on here will know that any cap for your international country, well, you know, whoever it may be, you know, and let's be honest, Northern Ireland are obviously excelling over the last, you know, riding the crest of wave over the last number of years. So a lot of people will be aware of them. But any caps and any goals for your country is an unbelievable honor. You know, I certainly never had the honor. I wish I did, and was never quite good enough to do that. So I'm sure a lot of people understand that. So when you talk about going from playing, before I open up to the kind of questions from our players, and a lot of them will be playing questions, of course. Did you know you wanted to go into coaching straight away? How did that come about?
Yeah, so I've got a really good story about my coaching. So in my second year at Burnley, I had a knee injury that they thought was really bad. So one of my old managers, Tony Pulis at Stoke City, said to me, "Listen, son, go and get your coaching badges just in case you don't get back from this." And it's kind of a mixed story for you young boys, that you have to have such a positive mind frame. I always thought I would return and play. But then the second part of this story is that you must always prepare for the future, whether it be education, whether it be making sure that there's much more to life than the game that we play. And the game is beautiful, and it's for all of us, I'm sure it's at the epicenter of our lives. But it's not everything, and you have to make sure that you keep up with the education, you keep up. And for me, my education was coaching. So I was 20 years old when I actually got my A license. And when I did my A license, my partner was Eddie Howe, who was at the time Bournemouth manager. So on coaching courses, you obviously discourse and go through different types of football. And when I returned to Burnley after that summer doing my coaching badges, we were going to have a new manager, and on the Monday morning I came in, and the new manager was Eddie Howe, my partner on the coaching course. So I was actually on the same level of coaching as my manager at the time. He was 37 and I was 20. So I was very lucky to use the education system that Northern Ireland provided for me, because I did my coaching with Northern Ireland. So from a very young age, coaching was always going to be a path for me. And I'm so glad I did it early on, because when I started to come to the end of my career, I had a nice runway through to getting a coaching job.
Okay, mate. So obviously you knew you wanted to go into coaching at that period. I guess the $1 million question, why the US and how did that come about?
I think for all you young boys out there, opportunities in football are limited at times. It's such a competitive sport. You guys know that from playing football, but it's the same on the coaching front. So when I was at Tampa Bay Rowdies at the end of my career, my friend Neil Collins managed to get the head coach job, and he rang me straight away and he said, and I was still playing at the time. I wasn't really thinking about retiring, but he said to me, "You've got your A license, right?" And I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "Do you want to come and be the assistant?" And at the time, it was the right time for me in terms of retiring. I'd had so many injuries, so I just kind of like decided there and then, right, I'm going to step into the coaching now. I didn't necessarily decide USA. It was just the opportunity that was put in front of me. But I'm so glad I did, because I've learned so much from coaching over here and the difficulties of coaching compared to England. So I don't know, Larry, are these boys based USA or UK?
They're all based in Orlando and surrounding
Perfect.
areas. Yeah.
So you guys will all know the MLS. You will know the USL if you're watching the secondary division. But how to configure a squad and coach the different dynamics of players in the MLS. So you will have the DPs. You will have players that have played at a level for so many years that are good footballers, good soccer players. And then you'll have boys straight out of college who need a lot of work. So trying to mix all these different players to one team, if you can do that as a coach, then every other country, in my opinion, will be just fine. Because in every other country, you generally have 23 bona fide professionals that can play the game. But in America, you have to be really creative and really test your coaching to the fullest to try and configure all these different, I call it 4 tiers of players, the DPs, the players that are good at the level, and then the players that, you know, they might just make up the back end of your squad and need a lot of work and have deficiencies. And then there's the 4th tier that I would say would be the college players that have got so much to learn, but ultimately you might need 2 or 3 to play 15 games a season in the MLS. And that's great for you guys as young players to get opportunities, as the MLS is always encouraging homegrown players. And so in short, I'm so glad I coach in the US, because I do believe that if you can coach in the MLS, you can coach anywhere in the world.
Thanks, Pao. I mean, that's interesting, because I'd never even thought about that, with the, you know, the intricacies that you're having to deal with you know, college and etc. DPs, etc. That is fascinating, really. For a lot of the boys will know that from Orlando City, of course, but some things that we take for granted as you know, not being in the US. So regards Inter Miami then. So Inter Miami, you've been at for a year and a half now, is that right?
So this is my 3rd year.
Oh, 3rd year. Okay.
This is my 3rd year Inter Miami. So my pathway has been, I call it a pure pathway. So I started off in the development team, the 2 team, as assistant to Jason Kreis, who is a former Orlando City head coach. We worked together for a year, and then a new manager came into that team, but I stayed consistent with the MLS 2 team. So I had 2 years with the development team, which was fantastic for my coaching. Again, the emphasis was not on winning. The emphasis was on producing players to train / play with the first team. There was a real emphasis on playing young players to get them to the first team. And the reason I'm so lucky is that now I've made the progression to assistant coach to Phil Neville on the first team. And I get to see the players that I've worked with make that same journey and help and aid them in that journey. And again, that journey isn't the end for them, because there's a recycle process, because if they don't play with the first team, they go back down to the 2 team to get minutes to work on their game. But I do believe I'm at the, and I call it a pure way, because I've worked my way up through the football club, just the same way that young players have to work their way up and work hard and earn their stripes. And again, I'm still learning as a young assistant coach at the level. But again, a big part of my role is to facilitate the ups and downs of the young players. I monitor performances at the MLS2 level, performances of their actual training. So I watch all their training back as well as ours, which is plenty of hours on the laptop. That's why I'm wearing glasses now. So, you know, again, to go back to the question of Inter Miami, we know that this is a long-term project, and at the very heart of this football club will be young players, and the manager Phil Neville is going to be brave in playing those young players, and the owners with David and Jorge Mas, they certainly want young Floridian kids out there.
That's awesome. That's great to hear for all of these kids on this call. I'm sure everybody's fed up with hearing me talk, and as we've got somebody, you know, who's, as I say, living it and breathing it as we speak, I'd like to open it to some questions. Has anybody got some questions that they'd like to ask, or a question they'd like to ask Martin whilst we have him on. Is there anybody that would like to start us off? I'm going to pick on someone if not Martin. That's the kind of person I am.
No problem.
Well, there's only one person I can see at the minute with his screen on, and he's just looking at me. And he's laughing, so he knows it's going to be him. Mr. Jack, Jack's looking at me. Jack, come on, give me a question. What you got?
Oh, what did you do to become successful in soccer?
It's a good question, and it's a really simple answer for me. So again, successful is relevant, right, to everybody individually. So there's players that have won the World Cup. I've played with players that have won the World Cup, and I've played with players that haven't won anything but have had successful careers in terms of reaching their best that they can reach. And again, this is a really short answer because I believe it's so true. For me, success was about two things: about working really, really hard, and it's as simple as that, working really, really hard, and humility. And again, you have to, over a long career, there was moments where I got too big for my boots. That's a saying in England, where I thought I was excellent when I wasn't. And you learn lessons along the way that, no, you're not that good. You have to continue to work hard and stay humble. And I do believe that is the route to success. Very simple answer, but it's so true. If you work hard, you get lucky.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Pato. And great question, Jack. Well done. Colton, you've got your hand up. Love that. Could you unmute yourself, please, buddy?
At Inter Miami, do you work with any of the youth players?
So when you say youth players, do you mean the second team or the younger groups?
No, like younger.
Perfect. So younger age groups. It's a great question, and I'm going to shock you here. So something that I did as development for my coaching is when I was the assistant of the the MLS 2 team, I actually at nighttime stayed and coached academy players, IDPs, which I don't know, are any of you familiar what IDP means, which is basically an individual development program. So it's, in short, it's just individual work, whether it be strikers working on shooting, midfield players working on passing, defenders working on shuffling, 1v1s, unit work. So I actually stayed because it was COVID and my family were in England. I actually stayed at nighttime, 5 to 8 p.m. and took groups of players, maybe 2 or 3 individually, and worked on their games, on their weaknesses. I actually broke down with their age group coaches. Even though I was coaching the MLS 2, I actually sat with the coaches and broke down what each individual player needed to work on. And I did that quite selfishly for myself, because what I did is I dummy runned all of my sessions on the younger players so that I can then take them to the MLS 2 players, and I knew that they would be successful. Because some of the sessions weren't, some of them I made mistakes and it didn't quite flow and it wasn't right. So I used that as my development as a coach, but I also believe there was a lot of good in what I did, because I do think that some of my work was fantastic for them and their progression. So in short, yes, I work with all the age groups, and I think that's important. Even now, I go and watch the academy age groups from U17s all the way down to U12s. I was at the U12 session on Wednesday, and I won't do it because of protection, but I'm able to give you the best players at Inter Miami from U12s all the way through to U17s. I'm able to give you their names, the positions, strengths and weaknesses. And I think that's really important for our club, because when the first team manager asks me, right, who's the best performers at MLS2, I'm able to tell him, and I'm able to tell him all the way down to U12s as well to get a great knowledge of the football club and the next players through to play for Inter Miami one day in the first team. So bit of a long answer there, but just to give you some insight of what goes on at football clubs, people in the first team like ourselves, Phil, we really care. And again, we do spend time with the young age groups here.
That's great. Good question, Colton, and very interesting answer, Patty. Thanks for that. I would never have guessed that. Again, you know, just the level of detail. I know X amount, but to know all of the age groups, that's fantastic. A couple of questions. Keenan, would you mind reading your question? If you'd rather not, don't worry about it. But I just think it's a really good question. Are you there, Keenan?
What?
There we go.
Yeah, I'm here. What kept you going to achieve your goals?
Yeah, that's a great question, because, you know, unfortunately, again, to help you young boys and girls, if there's any on, there will be ups and downs. Okay, it's not going to go perfect, and the quicker you learn the coping mechanisms and the tools, the better. Again, when I was young, I always had a great inner drive to be the best player I could be, and I was very lucky to have that. But I think you need good people around you, okay? Because when you're young, yes, you have bad moments. You have times where you feel frustrated, you make mistakes. And I had some fantastic coaches at Stoke City, some excellent coaches all the way through the age groups. And that's key, to have fantastic coaches and support networks. I had a mum that believed in me blindly at times. That was fantastic for me. She thought I was going to be the best player ever, as all our mums and dads, I'm sure, do. And that's important. Or family members. It could be a sister, brother, auntie, uncle, grandpa, grandma. So family support is key, and it was key for me to continuing to push to be the best player I could be and to get into the first team at Stoke City when I was young. But I will circle back around to that. It must come from you. It must come from you, because if you want to be a soccer player, there's no one else that can do it but you. And yes, I've mentioned all the support networks and the emphasis on support, but it's got to come from you. You have to want to take the ball and practice your kick-ups, practice your skills. You have to want to go to training and be respectful to your coaches and listen and learn. And if you do that, and you stay consistent with that behavior, you'll be more than fine. And when you do hit bad moments, which will happen, it's got to come from you to push yourselves to go, right, I expect these bad moments, and I've just got to continue to work hard and practice the things, skills. It might be, you know, it might be occasions where you're young and you don't have the answers. So again, your support network, your coaches, and you must listen. And if you listen and learn, you'll be fine.
Thanks, Barry. Luke, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask your question, buddy?
Yeah. So as a coach to you, what makes a player like stand out?
Great question. Great question. So I'll give the answer after I've kind of explained. Very rarely what stands out to me is the talent of the player. Okay? Because at the MLS, there's lots of good players. And when I'm scouting for us, and when I'm watching players in Brazil, when I'm watching players in Chile, when I'm watching players in Uruguay, there's some fantastic players. And I'm sure all you guys are fantastic players. But when I'm coaching, the key thing is attitude. Attitude is so important. And what I have come to learn, and I'm still learning as a coach, although I have all the badges I need, I am still learning every day on my craft. And the one thing that I always tell young coaches that are starting out or young players is that if someone has a good attitude, you can work with them and they can get better, and their talent will surpass what you see now. You can have players that are phenomenally talented, unbelievable footballers, but if they have a bad attitude, it's going to be really hard for them to make it to the top level and to stay there. And that's key, to stay there. And what makes players stay there is the fact that they have fantastic attitudes, they do the right things, whether it be eat, whether it's sleep at the right times, whether it's live correctly. The one thing that stands out to me and will always be the indicator of me wanting to sign a player, work with a player, is attitude. And when I say attitude, and I can go into a bit more detail by describing what good attitude is, it's a young player wanting to learn. It's a young player doing whatever he can by himself to learn. Then it's him inside the training session, reacting second actions. And what I mean by second actions, if he loses the ball, he chases it back. If he makes a mistake, it doesn't take him out of the game. He continues to do the right things. And if a young player has this, then this is such an important ingredient to being successful and being a professional football player, because we all make mistakes time and time again. But if that attitude stays consistent, you'll be amazed how many players with better attitudes and less talent actually surpass the talented players.
Thank you.
No problem.
Well done, Luke. We have Cooper, if that's all right. Cooper, you got a question, buddy?
Yeah. What do you think is the difference between young American players and young European players?
Good question. So, I think one thing I'll have to point out, because I've worked when I've coached. I mean, I've watched a lot of football at young levels in England on my scouting trips and club visits. The one thing I'll point out before they answer the question is that the models are completely different. Okay, from UK football to US, there's the college route. In England, generally, it's when you leave school at 16, there's an apprenticeship route that basically takes you 16 to 19 at professional clubs, and already you're a bona fide professional. But in America, there's the schooling system, which is fantastic, where players go away, they go to college, and then 23, they draft, obviously, you guys know, into the MLS. So there's real significant differences of the models. But I do believe the game is improving at such a rate of knots in the USA that the difference between the US and the UK players are getting closer and closer every day. Now, I would say that you can see in the men's national team in the US, you have players that generally are at elite clubs in Europe now as well. So to answer this honestly, there's not much difference between a young boy playing soccer in the UK and a young boy playing soccer in the USA. Okay, and there must be a positive mind frame from all you guys to go, if you practice and work hard and you get to the MLS, then maybe one day you could play in the Premier League or you play in the Bundesliga. The game is growing so fast over here that by the time you guys reach professional age, I think that the gap or the differences that may have been there between the UK and the USA will be very minimal, and it shouldn't stop you guys from achieving everything that you want in soccer. Again, if you work hard and you train as hard as you can. Then on the secondary topic, sorry, is that the coaching at this level is getting better and better. You can see the influx of foreign coaches actually at this moment in the MLS becoming less and less, because the actual guys that are really doing ever so well in the MLS are actually American-based coaches, which is nice to see. So in short, guys have to be really positive and know that by the time you guys get to professional level, there'll be very minimal differences, and the world is your oyster in terms of the soccer front.
Thanks,
Okay,
Paddy.
thanks.
Good question, Cooper. Guys, I'm just conscious of my time, as I know, he's on a strict schedule with obviously a game coming up. So, guys, any last couple of questions before we shoot off? Would anybody like to take this moment to ask one? Okay, I'm gonna ask one question. I'm sorry, I know he's on a Jay Nielsen. You're number 9, and I'm going to ask you if you've got any questions, because you've got a considerably better number 9 in front of you on the other end of the screen than you have this way. Okay, so as a number 9,
Thank you.
what's your question, buddy?
So I kind of have 2 questions. One of them being, how do you like prepare your team for a game as a coach, and like how, as a number 9, how to prepare for a game? As in, like, are you just willing to train hard before, or are you just trying to like work hard during the game, or is it just both in practice and in game?
Good question. So I'll answer the playing side first, because that's going to be shorter and more simple. So when I was a player, the way that I prepared, and it's interesting you said training to games. What the message I would always say to young players is that there's no difference. You must train the way that you play, or else you won't get better. So you must train ever so hard. And then the game is the platform then to go and try things and express yourselves. So when I was a player, my preparation was really, really simple. My game was such a simple game where I went out there and I pressed as hard as I possibly could, and then I looked to score goals. And I didn't really complicate it for myself at all. I really made it that simple, because that was just my style, and it helped me just play with freedom. Now I'll go on to how I prepare for games now as a coach, because football's evolving, and the technology and the social media aspect, your phones, your iPads, laptops, the modern day players crave videos, constant information. So to give you a quick summary of how we prepare for games, we will do a debrief after games for improvement. So we'll do a video of in possession, out of possession, and set plays. So that's 3 videos to describe what we can do better. Then we'll flick it over to preparation for the next game. The first couple of days will be on ourselves in terms of how we are going to beat the opposition, whether it be defensively or attacking. Then I will deliver a scout report to the manager on the team and opponent that we're playing. And that can probably last around about 2 days of detail in terms of what the manager will want. Again, I'll break the team down that we're playing into 3 phases, which will be build, create phase, and finishing attacks, the 3 parts of the game in possession. Then I'll do the same, but on the defensive end. So it will be how they high press, mid block, and how they low block. Inside that will be set pieces as well. So you can imagine, listening to me now, that's a lot of information that we have on the opposition. And because we're at the elite level and the small details matter, we prepare a lot of detail to deliver to the manager, and then the manager decides bite-sized versions that he gives to the players. So all of the information I've talked about doesn't actually get to the players, but we as a coaching staff know it. And then we just decide that maybe 1-2 important things in each phase that the players need to know. Then on top of that, guys, what we do is we give individual meetings or unit meetings to number 9s, for instance, because you're a number 9. And I'll give them maybe 3 videos of what their centre backs do. Are they aggressive? Do they drop off? Are they poor in the air? Are they poor at the front post? So when the players actually get to Friday training, or let's say Saturday morning, they've got all this information given to them, it's all processed, and then we just let them relax and they're ready for the game. So you guys don't have to worry about all that because that's a coaching side of it. But you must be aware that football is it's improving all the time, and the margins are getting so close between winning, losing, making it as professionals, not making it as professionals, that technology is playing a massive part, and statistics and analytics is just what part of the game is now. And you know, you guys are lucky to be on the US side where you see NFL, basketball, baseball that is already very number based. Soccer is certainly becoming, or shall I say, we are using analytics a lot more, and it's a real valuable tool for preparation of games. Is that clear, Laurie?
Absolutely, mate. I think it's fantastic information, and you know, we've had a lot of guest speakers on, and honestly, the detail that you're going into it, for me is fantastic for these players to hear. So thank you for that.
No problem.
And good question, Jay. And the very last question we've got, it just says Zoom user, so I don't know who it is offline, but they've got their hand up. So if you know you got your hand up, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
How often would you say that you should like get on the fields and work on your craft and like touch the ball, do cone drills? And is there ever too much that you could do?
It's a good question. I don't believe at your age there is at all. I think if you speak to professionals like myself, but let's take this back to professionals that have reached the pinnacle of the game. At your ages, they didn't worry about science, and we call it periodization, because you're so young and your bodies are so youthful. And to answer the question, quite honestly, I think if you can grab a soccer ball and practice, you do as much as you want. And I do think that is something that must stay consistent with young players. You have to master the football. You have to enjoy. And again, I haven't touched upon, I've been very professional in what I've said and the information that I've given. But one of the key principles in my model that I will use when I become a head coach, and I believe I'll be a head coach very soon, is that if we're not having fun, what are we doing? You know, we've got to have fun. And if your fun is grabbing a ball and doing kick-ups, cone drills, practicing against the wall, kicking it in the air and doing bicycle kicks, or trying to do Neymar's where he scoops it over his head, I don't even know what it's called, go and do it and go and have fun. Okay, because we mustn't forget this game is a game, and all the best players in the world, the Messis, the Ronaldos, when they score goals, when they're doing all the fantastic skills, you see them smiling. So no, there's never too much you can do as young players. Go and get the football and play, and play some more, in my opinion.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Honestly, mate, we'll end it there. But just from me, this has been riveting. Honestly, like I hope that the players on here are listening to some of the stuff, some of the information that's been given out, and you know, some of the advice. I think that to hear it from a player and to hear it from a player that's then turned into a coach and is coaching at a very highest level is brilliant. So I hope the guys that you've took this in and understood a lot of what Martin's saying. I think, Pato, we can't thank you enough. I know that you've flown, you've changed your training schedule, and at no stage did you say, I can't do this. You straight away said, well, we'll twist the time or whatever, we'll make it fit it in. At no time, the easy thing would have been to say, no, I'm struggling. I know you're a busy man. So thank you ever so much for fitting this in. We really, really appreciate it, buddy. And good luck this weekend against the Sounders, and we'll catch you soon, buddy. Thank you ever so much.
No problem. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, mate. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.